Party's going on.
My name's Roy. You say boy or Roy?
Welcome to Stories from the Vault.
You can take the boy out of Fort Walton Beach, but you can't take Fort Walton Beach out of the boy.
Hosted by Sean Murphy.
This is my chicken. All the eggs you want,
Oh, we
baby.
about to make a mistake?
Sure, he was out of his mind.
This is still sketchy as fuck.
Let's just go. You're the boss.
Yeah, this thing is gonna be
He's a
hard.
hooker with a heart of gold.
Prepare yourself. This is gonna be like a trip through time.
Dude,
What's up?
what's up?
Long time coming.
Yeah, episode 1.
That's
yeah,
right.
This is a big deal for me, for you. It's pretty wild. So I'm sitting here with Sean Murphy. Sean, you're a photographer, a creative. You're known as a crazy fucker, you know. Wonderful wife, Rafi, 3 boys, right? Like, yeah. From Fort Walton Beach, Florida, right?
Yeah, I grew up here in Fort Walton. We're in Fort Walton right now. For all of you that don't know that I moved out of LA, I'm in Florida now, where I grew up in Fort Walton Beach. Very proud to be back. I left when I was 18. Been on the West Coast for about 30 years. So we just built a new compound here in Fort Walton,
Right,
near downtown,
right.
in the hood.
Not quite hood, but I mean, it's on the fringe for sure.
Fringy.
Yeah,
Fringy.
absolutely.
If I were still smoking crack, I could literally just reach out the back window and get crack.
I mean, we can dive into that already, right out of the gate. Absolutely. Yeah, you're. I imagine your neighbors.
But-
how many of your neighbors? You've been here for how long? In this,
6 months.
6 months.
Ish, yeah.
How many of your neighbors know you? Like knew you within the first couple of weeks? Like, I mean,
Right away.
Of course.
They were a little nervous at first because I didn't fit the neighborhood.
Right.
And this building we're in now was, I don't know what it was. It was like the McDonald's office headquarters. And back when I was a kid, it was a dance studio. And then it was vacant, kind of just a dumping ground for everyone's trash for about a decade. And so we moved in. I think they were concerned with, what was I doing here?
Or who is this guy with all the tattoos?
And like, am I gentrifying their neighborhood and all that kind of stuff, which, you know.
Sure.
But I think we're really good, on good terms with everybody now. And,
Good.
And, you know, there are, obviously, if you know me, you know I like to shoot the people around me. And so they're all in the studio frequently, and they're getting shot, and some of them are rap artists, and when we're shooting video, music, you know, you name it.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
going on.
Just covering,
You know?
and it's all here.
Yeah.
So you said you left Fort Walton whenever you were 18.
Mm-hmm.
And did you immediately go to LA, or were you like bouncing around the country a little bit for a little while before? Or, like, what's your story there?
I'll keep it short, but you know, I didn't know what I was gonna do. My best friend and I moved to Hawaii to surf on the North Shore for like a winter, and then when I came back to Fort Walton, I was just floundering. Didn't have any skill sets. Didn't have really any goals. And my brother was gonna play soccer at UCF, so I tagged along with him just to kind of. My mom said she would, you know, give me a car and pay my rent. So what the hell? So I went there. Anyway, took a semester of community college, and within that semester, I took a photography class, and that's a whole nother story. But that was my shift.
Was that the moment?
That was the moment.
That was the
Yeah,
moment.
that
That's
was the
whenever
moment. Yeah.
you connected.
Yeah.
Everyone has that moment when they're
Yeah.
a creative that just like it was a before and after moment, a pivotal point that like totally shifts your perspective and thrusts you into whatever it is, whether it be music, the arts, the video, film. A lot of people, obviously, photography, and you know that whole thing. So you have this moment down at UCF. And which brother?
And let's be clear. I wasn't at UCF.
The community college.
I was at Valencia Community College.
I know Valencia.
East Campus.
I know Valencia. That's funny as hell. We're 18, 19, 20 years old at that point.
19.
Okay. And whenever you got finished with the community college, like, are you doing the same thing all these guys are doing? Like, you get enough money in your pocket to get a camera, right? You know, you don't know shit about film. You don't know shit about anything.
Well, I mean, so I didn't have my girlfriend, which later on became my wife, Laura, who's also from Fort Walton. Basically it went down like this. My teacher saw something in me that was above what he was normally seeing, and he said, if I was you, I would just quit this school and go to New York or Boston. I was like, you really? And so I just left, and so I didn't even finish that semester. I went about 3/4 through, just saved some money at the restaurant I was working. My girlfriend and I then just drove to Boston in a U-Haul with our cat. And, in Boston, I didn't know where I was going to go, what I was going to do. But I didn't know anything. I just knew I wanted to take pictures.
Right.
And I didn't know how to do that. I had a little portfolio with, a bunch of weird shit that I had done in the community college.
Right.
And I was looking at, the, mass art college, which is, a 4-year, a lot of money kind of thing. There was the museum art college, I think, which was also a lot of money. And then I was on a subway, and I saw this little, piece of paper, those little pull-off kind of things. And I saw, learn photography. I was like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And I pulled it off, and I got off the subway, and I brought my little portfolio and walked up the stairs of this crazy, dank, old stairwell in Kenmore Square, which, if you know Boston, Kenmore Square is legendary. It has the Rat Skeller and the punk bands.
Okay.
It's kind of like the little old Times Square of New York and Boston. It's
Dropkick Murphys.
The gritty, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I walked up the stairs and I saw this lady there, and I showed her my portfolio, and she was surprised that I even had one. And I said, what do I do? Can I come to your school? And they were like, yeah, sure, you're in. I was like, sweet. And then I think it was total of $7,000.
Okay.
Or something like that. Maybe per year or total. It was nothing. But to me, that was a lot of money back in 1990.
So they really streamlined the application process.
So it's two years.
Right?
2 years photo.
Right.
Bam. And, you and I were in a car for a few hours the other day, and we were talking about 4x5 cameras and old film cameras. And so the get down at New England School of Photography was your first year was strictly the history of photography and learning how to use a 4x5 camera and a light meter. And it sucked at the time. I was like, man, I want to, be Steve Meisel. I want to shoot fashion and this thing and that thing. But in retrospect, it was a really good, it taught me a lot and gave me the skill sets I, need today. And so anyway, that's kind of, and then I left Boston, went to back to the North Shore, Hawaii, because I was sick of the snow.
Right.
Went there and started kind of shooting at for local Honolulu magazine and fashion shoots and whatnot.
Sure.
Well, real quick, that show, The Real World. Remember that show?
I do remember The Real
that was dope.
World. Yeah.
Back when MTV was a thing.
Oh, it was hot shit.
Right.
For sure,
So they had The Real World New York, and then I don't know if there was one.
Was that the first one?
The first one.
Yeah.
It was super cool. And then the second one was Real World, I think San Francisco. I applied to that one.
Oh, to be on
the show.
Okay.
I don't even remember how it happened because it was before internet, so you had to do it by mail and stuff. So I remember walking around Honolulu and my wife taking photos of me and me sending photos to The Real World.
I know why I remember it. Puck was
he beat me.
Did he really?
Yeah, that was my position.
Yeah.
And so they sent a letter to Hawaii, and they said, "Oh, you've made it to level 2 or whatever the thing was, and we want to do we're something we want to do a test or whatever in San Francisco." So I was like, "Fuck!" So I just told my girlfriend Laura, I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna go to San Francisco." And blah blah blah, and she's like, "Okay." And then I just jumped on a plane, went to San Francisco. I had a credit card, I think with $1,200 or $1,500 on it max.
Right.
And being 20, now I'm 23, I think.
Right.
I get off the thing. I'm in San Francisco. I'm like, this is the raddest place I've ever been. Period. I see these old Vespas driving around, these mod types. With the leather coats,
absolutely,
the fur,
man.
the plastic pants.
It's a culture
with the big
100%.
pompadour. I said, "Oh no!" And the dude I was staying with was like, "Oh, I know a guy who builds those mopeds." And I said, so I went there and I bought one. I wasn't even supposed to stay there. I was like, I just spent all my money on a P200E and I got a leather coat. I'm like, fuck it, I'm staying. I called my wife. I said, or my girlfriend at the time. I said, I'm staying. That was it. Are you coming or are you gonna stay in Hawaii? Like that was the point where I was like, I'm here.
Yeah.
What are you doing? And she came. Then we, stayed, and I'll kind of fast forward a little bit because there's going to be other podcasts I think where we're going to dive more into the San Francisco days. But my whole start was in kind of the gay clubs of San Francisco.
Right.
And that's where I met, all the key players, like the guys who started Surface Magazine, who took me in and kind of gave me my start with the celebrities. I kind of owe it to them in the beginning.
Right.
And then all the bands that used to come to San Francisco would stay at the hotel that I worked at, the Phoenix Hotel, and then blah, blah, blah. It was all hand in hand. I lived above a gay porn studio, Falcon Studios, in this loft, and somehow in another story I'll tell you how that evolved into more work in Los Angeles. But then I did a shoot in Los Angeles, saw the palm trees, saw the vibe.
Fell in love.
I was like, this is where I gotta be. And then we just moved to LA.
And
that was it.
How long? Yeah, when did you move?
That was 1996. Then I moved to LA.
Okay, so you're sitting like we're just over what?
A long time.
Yeah.
So I've been in Los Angeles most of my life.
Okay. Yeah.
About exactly half of my life.
Okay. With when you started out, like, and I'm just curious about your career, like, were you super, like you mentioned fashion a little bit earlier, were you like, man, I want to do the fashion thing, I want to get into, NY or New York Fashion Week, I want to do all that, or were you just like all about the craft and trying to learn as much as you could? Like, what was your, you know what I mean? Like, were you super into portrait work or anything like that, or was it just like, I want it all?
No, I had a specific goal. I idolized, there's three people really. It was Annie Leibovitz, number one. That's what I wanted to do, was I wanted to take pictures of celebrities and musicians in character study, I guess is the terminology, where it's like a portrait of them but shot in, like, I remember her shooting, stood out in my head like Fleetwood Mac, and the guys would be out in a field dress as women or so-and-so, and I just thought, man, that's so cool. Like, with that music thing, I can really, like, it's like theater, and I can kind of do what I want. So that was kind of my main, she was kind of the driving force, but then there was this guy, Joel Peter Whitkin, who was this freak who would, like, I think he bought dead people from, like, morgues.
Right.
And then, I don't know how they let him do this, but he would prop them up and then make them have sex with other corpses, and there was animals and weird shit, and it was all shot in, like, it was mixed media kind of shit. Okay. I thought that was cool. Right. And then there was Richard Avedon, who was the iconic, he shot that classic portrait. Okay. To me, he was the man. The dude. The fashion guy, the portrait guy. He was simple. Right. And just crisp.
So with the people that you just listed, you got literally three of, like, probably some of the most iconic, photographers of the time. Leibovitz has literally made history, either with these amazing images, and arguably one of the most famous photographers, And so were you somebody that kind of grabbed a little piece of each of there, or were you just really, really into your work? Because you're talking about a time when the internet wasn't hot, right?
There was no internet.
Right. So what, like, are you, where are you seeing it? Rolling Stone magazine, I imagine, was a huge one for it, right?
I would just live at I would live at the magazine racks, and
it's really, really interesting because now there is no digital in the time space that we're actually talking about. You're in the shit and you're having to hustle for it. It's not, I snapped a photo here and then, linked it, or downloaded a Dropbox. There's not sharing services and all this other stuff. And a lot of people that maybe, I grew up with the internet, like I got to see the old 28.8, dial up, modem and that kind of thing. You're grinding, you know what I mean? In a totally different way. Like,
we had, I think, so I got my first computer. There's always been computers, but, like, in terms of, like, I got my first Mac. They were running some program. I was in San Francisco. And it was this big, giant, white, I don't remember what it was. This big Mac. And then the internet, started. So it was kind of squeaking. But I do. I mean, here's like a general day in LA went for me, and I had a crew, and I've talked about this many times. You know, it kind of reminds me of the stories of like Saturday Night Live,
Right?
Like from the '70s when and I'm not comparing myself to Saturday Night Live level people,
right?
But they would talk about like it was like Chevy Chase and
Belushi,
and they would all hang out and they lived together.
Right.
They would, party together. They would hang out at the same restaurant, and that's where they kind of got all their juices flowing, all their stuff happening. Well, it was similar for me because there was one of the first guys I met in San Francisco, or I'm sorry, Los Angeles, was a guy, Steven Stickler. R.I.P. He died. He ended up being one of my best friends and mentors, but he passed away a couple of years ago. Well, he worked at this magazine, bikini magazine, Ray Gun magazine. They were kind of the edgy fashion music LA. They were the kind of the hot magazines of the time.
Okay.
And they gave a lot of photographers their start. I think Ray Gun just came out with a book, like a hard copy book that you can buy.
Right.
And it has like all the photos from the 90s. It was really cool. But so that's also a deep story of how I like kind of got in. So Steven gave me my first job because he worked for them. And then I kind of started getting more. My first job was, I can't remember, Bush or Rage Against the Machine, one of those two bands. But by working with the magazine, I was a printer. Like I printed my own work,
right.
Where most people would take it to the lab and then order the prints. And there was few people in LA that made their own prints, believe it or not. So there would be a rental lab in Hollywood, and there would be, a handful of people in my circle that would come and we would rent space. We'd print, had these little rooms, and then there was a central kind of common space where we'd all wait for our prints to come out. That's where I met, Carlos Sorrell, who best top photographers on the planet, still a very good friend of mine, lives in LA. Dude's like on 10 more levels than I will ever be. Reggie Casagrande, who's badass, and she now works, I believe, sorry Reggie if I'm wrong, she works for Adidas and was living in Germany doing something hot. Craig Cameron Olsen, Cheryl Niels, who's one of the top, she shoots, celebrity photographers. So there was a few of us, and we came up together, and we all would assist each other.
Right.
We would kind of give each other, critiques on, how to print stuff, or how we thought we were, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So we spent this first years together, like every day.
Is this and was they very much, or were they very much your crew?
Yeah, my crew, the crew. Like
everyone's talking. I can imagine. Around the
so it was a buzz,
yeah.
and Carlos and I were, we spent every day together for a series of years, and we were inseparable. And so he had a camera.
Right.
He owned a Pentax 6.7, and he had a dark room in his house.
Right.
I lived in a loft for a while. I had a dark room, but I had no cameras. I believe it or not, I didn't own a good camera until I was 30. I just rented them every day.
Sure.
Or borrowed Carlos's.
Right.
So we would just if I had a job, he would assist me. If he had a job, I'd assist him. We'd help each other, and we just did that for years until I remember. Again, it's another story, but we kind of all at different times got our big breaks.
Right.
And
it's one of those. Was the dynamic like? And please understand, everybody, that where we're at now currently, in 2020, the culture has shifted a little bit. There's still, and that's why it's such a cool thing to have Sean around, is because you have so much access to the way things used to be, where if one of your guys, one of your crew, got their break, you're stoked for them. You're the equivalent of somebody from Saturday Night Live, dude, I got a feature movie.
It was very cool.
So
y'all
was very tight knit like that, super supportive, and jamming together. It was all about you saw each other. Your creatives. And appreciated it.
All right, here we go.
Who's the homeless guy doing the Facebook Lives? So weird. I'm gonna have to totally get those antibacterial wipes for my phone.
It's all part of the deal. So, real quick, so we're sitting in here, and like I'm looking at like your body of work, you know, and each one of these boxes is a different celebrity, high-end brand, high-end client. What time frame are we actually talking about with what I'm looking at right now?
So everything in this room would be, for the oldest stuff are in these boxes.
These guys down here?
Yeah, and that starts at 1989.
Okay.
And then the music starts in here.
Right.
But they're small shoots, so they're small folders.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Back in the day when I was poor and I couldn't afford, I was always poor. But when I was real poor.
Right.
And it was like, I'm going to buy film or like a burger
right.
kind of poor. That's when I would shoot smaller amounts of film, and they would go in there, and then it evolved into these kind of real jobs and bigger.
It's funny, the first one I pull is Jimmy Eat World.
Jimmy Eat
It's
World.
just like, okay.
Who are they?
Yeah. So, but where does this, like, is this your body of work? Like, when does this end, or this little segment?
This ends 2005.
Okay, so it's not growing, it's
No, that's
done.
it.
Okay. Why 2005?
Because that's the digital.
DSLR revolution. Okay. Dude, that's pretty badass, man, to have that like that level of like, I mean, literally you're walking in, and in each one of them I'm assuming negatives, prints, everything and there. So we're like,
yeah, I mean, so
first thing it says Maynard.
well, this isn't a good example because this is only negatives. But,
Sure.
let's pull a different one. These guys are freaks, the locusts. So we do a shoot,
Right.
and then you have your contact sheets,
Absolutely.
which match the negative, and then they would pick, whoever would pick whatever image they want. Those are cool. And then I would there's the selects there,
Right.
and I would take those and I would take them to the lab and print them in that lab I was telling you about.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that's rad, dude. So you literally have from 1989 to 2007. Now,
2005.
2005. Yeah, we lost a couple years in there. Yeah, probably wasn't the first time. So, but with that, is this like, are these the creme de la creme of the highlight points, or is this literally
It's
everything?
everything.
It's everything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so everything that was a paid job.
But it's, there's, I mean, even over here, this is all film. I still have, tons of film from back in the day. That's
when you open the
bottle, I don't drink anymore, but
Right.
this is a bottle of wine from Maynard's Vineyard.
Nice.
When we were over at his house. So, it's portfolios.
Of course.
It's, all my tear sheets. It's gallery exhibits. It's old cameras, developing tanks, projectors to watch my 8mm, stuff.
Oh, I love it, dude. The funniest, like I said, the funniest thing is whenever we walked in here for the first time is like literally I'm over here. I've got my 12-year-old daughter, Sarah, she's hanging out, and she thinks Sean is just rad. He just thinks he's so cool, and she's quiet and reserved, and she sees this real creepy door, and it turns out I'm
Hello, little girl.
And like, me, I'm a little bit younger than you, but like still like I know where music came from, big in the 80s, 90s and stuff like that. And I'm like, I recognize that door, and I'm like, where's it from? And you're like, oh, bro, that's the Bang Your Head Quiet Riot video, door. The door.
Is it Bang Your
It
Head?
is, yeah.
Okay, so that's
because the next thing Sarah goes, opens up, and she's like, Bang Your Head Quiet Riot.
Yeah.
And she's like, Dad.
Yeah, it's the door. So in LA, there was a point in time where right after Frank Zappa.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So he passed away, and then I was hired by Bikini Magazine. Circle back to that. They hired me I used to do this thing in the magazine where a celebrity would test drive a car every issue.
Right.
So it'd be like,
just some random.
I did I can't remember. It was a bunch of people. I would go somewhere, meet a musician. We would get in a Mercedes. I remember doing one with Rick Ocasek. We test drove a Mercedes in Malibu, and then we did weird pictures. This time I was shooting Ahmet Zappa.
Okay.
And so I met Ahmet Zappa. We did a photo shoot, and his best friend Tori Mel was there, who's still to this day, these guys are all part of my crew. Once we met, we just that often happened in LA. I would meet we were all around the same age,
right,
in our 20s. you know, and I'm
Raging,
meeting,
going
and we
crazy,
just
yeah.
became. It just was a natural progression. So Ahmet and I became friends, and he became aware of my kind of financial struggles,
Right.
and you know, he loved me.
Right.
So his mom was really cool. Gail was always really nice to us and helped, made sure we had like a fridge in our house, and invited us over for Thanksgiving. Gave me a job working at Zappa Records, and my job at Zappa Records was basically I would help mail fan stuff like T-shirts and whatnot,
Right.
or I would go through the storage units with all of Frank's fan mail,
Okay.
and I would sort it.
Okay.
So I did that job for, I don't know, a couple of years,
Were
maybe
these
a year.
Were these the days where it's like on the back of your, you know, your cassette or whatever, there was this little tiny address that you could be like, to join our fan club?
Probably.
And people would sign it, you know, and be like, please, you know, and that kind of thing.
Probably.
Part of the catalog.
But
God, it's changed.
Frank had a place called Joe's Garage, which was in the Valley,
Okay.
in Van Nuys, and it was this iconic, down just some random street, Vose Street, and it was kind of in the middle of, like, you know, a place that made dildos and a rehearsal studio for like starving bands, and
Yeah.
he had his spot there, and that's where so many famous people recorded their music at Joe's Garage. Like Frank would produce their albums.
Right.
So you could go into this, and I took pictures of the wall. We'll talk about this on another one.
Yeah,
I'll
of
post
course,
this on
yeah.
the thing. But if you walk in Joe's Garage, the walls were just covered with signatures of, like, there was one from Angus Young of AC/DC.
Wow.
Dude, and they broke the walls down. Ahmet kept this piece of wall. It was Angus Young drew a picture of himself with a devil tail, and then there was like the Missing Persons and all the bands, Quiet Riot,
Yeah.
and I just would freak out. But anyway, the Quiet Riot drum where they filmed the video
Right.
was still like the padded walls.
Yeah.
That was
The little,
they
like, a
filmed,
sane asylum,
They
like,
filmed
setup,
that
right.
video in that Joe's Garage.
Seriously.
So they left it there, and I would always had my eye on that door,
Right.
like for like a long time.
Right.
And I'm like, hey man, you know, what's up with the door?
Right.
And so anyway, years and years, like I'm talking 20 years go by. Ahmet and I kind of, you know, we didn't ever stop our friendship, but certainly we all do our own thing. Everyone kind of fragments.
Yeah.
So Ahmet was turning Joe's Garage, was evolving into, like, Ahmet was making his recording studio. This was recent, like the last couple of years, year and a half, I suppose. And so I went there to take pictures of all the walls, of all the signatures, just for him.
Kind of a tribute
Yeah,
to
and as I was leaving,
right.
he gave me the door.
That's badass,
Yeah, so-
dude. Such a cool story.
So I'm like, cool, sweet.
It's
So
rock
now
and
I got
roll, man.
this
Yeah.
door.
Right.
I don't know what I'm doing with it, but I was thinking about recreating the video. You know?
Not to knock the time frame, but like the quality of the production could be improved.
On the door?
No, the entire video.
That's what I love about it. It's like
It's
like a the air. What do you call this? The air hose from a fish tank.
Yeah,
Like the
absolutely.
That's what
Yeah,
they used for like the cords,
right, and all
you
the
know?
stuff that it's the
That's-
mask and everything, and then suddenly the fog, you know, and
That's
he's on
why
stage
yeah,
and like the
yeah.
whole deal.
Well, that's
you know?
why I think I could recreate it.
Sure.
It's like lo-fi. It's like down, you know.
Yeah, it's on
yeah.
our level. You
And
know,
I have the
production.
door.
Yeah, of course.
So
that's that would be a valuable piece
Yeah.
that you'd need to recreate it. So what was the inspiration? Like you said that whenever you and Sean and I's story is kind of weird. So Sean and I connected because we both kind of operated in a creative space, and one day we just linked up and came kind of instant buddies, you know, like I always had a respect for your work because I thought you were way outside the box, you know, in the safe space, you know, which I think as a creative is something that people often wrestle with. They want to get out of their creative space and do something rad, and you're like, that for you was your norm, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
For somebody else that's like, oh my god, you know, and that's you're just like, dude, that's Tuesday for you. So we started talking, you know, became pretty good friends and stuff like that, and operated, you know, like I said, in the creative spaces and that sort of things together. And then we started talking about this on a trip down to Fort Myers, and here we are. What were some of the inspirations, or like, obviously you've got no shortage of content or anything, but where did the idea to come, like, actually do a podcast come from?
So, man, honestly, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like, podcasts annoy me.
Yeah.
Generally, like, there's very few there's just, it's like, how do you even, there's so many, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
You could find one in some pretty specific categories.
you could,
right?
So my wife and I found, I'm a huge Henry Rollins fan. So I was on a road trip or something, and I found him. I was like, and then I was just obsessed with it. I listened to every episode, like I was in like one road trip.
Sure.
And basically
Haagen-Dazs.
Yeah, he's so amazing. So
like,
his whole concept, the whole thing bases around, he just tells a story. His assistant Heidi will just show him an index card where it's like with a word on it, like Haagen-Dazs or My War or whatever. And based on that card, he'll go into the backstory of Lemmy or whatever the thing is.
Whatever it is.
And it kind of connected, or did connect, all the dots from his career, his entire career, in this really cool, intelligent way. And I thought, well, I'm not really an expert on. My wife will disagree. She'll say, well, you've done photography for 30 years. You must be an expert. I find myself learning every single day. I still feel like I'm learning. I don't feel like I'm a complete expert, but I've done a lot of things and I have some cool stories. And when I post things about the stories about bands or celebrities on, say, Facebook, people like them. And I would get messages about, when are you going to write the book? And that sounds good to me, but I'm still busy in my career, and I don't know when I'll have the time to ever write a book.
Sure.
Or nor do I have the skill set to write a book. Certainly I have the material, but I thought, man, this would be a cool idea. I could maybe, tell a story, and then after a bunch of stories, then maybe it could be translated into something down the road.
Sure,
possibly.
absolutely. If nothing else, I think the stories and just a short time that you and the last few years I've hung out with like each other is like, it's just funny as hell, man. Some of the stuff that you could like come up with and like, hey, it was this situation. But the thing about it is the thing about Sean is there's nothing about Sean that's pretentious. Like he's the guy you can call if you have some, a problem, an issue or anything like that. Dude, okay, so you and I, you're showing me this creative space and everything, and we see this laundry basket of Polaroids. And so speaking to like the Henry Rollins thing or whatever, first thing I do is I pull out, and this is like super cool because I'm gonna get this massive like totally over the top gaudy frame for this little 4x5 frame, that kind of thing. But you showed me the picture of Maynard, with the set that you guys did. I'm sure that'll be a story in its own right or whatever. But they just kind of clicked, and using that as a talking point or a conversation point, that's kind of gotten the ball rolling for you. Also with that whole, like being inspired by Henry, listening to a couple podcasts, that kind of thing. So,
and you know how to do this, because I don't know anything about sound.
Right.
And you do. And we hung out and we just kind of talked about it. It just, the timing was right.
Sure.
And it just worked out.
So in the spirit of the podcast, we got some background on Sean. If you guys don't know who he is, I highly recommend just Googling the guy. I promise you this is going to be a different podcast. But fortunate enough, you and I linked up, and I am the first guest / producer / resident, spilling water on the floor guy, and we've got Philip on board, which is great.
Yeah.
And obviously you would be what we call in the industry the talent.
The talent?
Yeah, the talent. Yeah. So earlier today we were sitting here, just kind of going through how we were going to do this, and you let me pick the first photo, which I greatly appreciate. It's a fucking honor, It's an awesome deal. And I grabbed these two characters, which is Jack Black and Kyle, Tenacious D, right? Happen to be a huge fan. To date, I think Jack Black's role in High Fidelity, like, totally stole the show, for the movie and everything. But tell me the story behind this photo.
Finally, to the purpose of the show.
Deal, right?
Enough bullshit.
Uno.
Yeah, Uno. So okay. So I met Jack Black. I think it was about So I used to be friends with his, at the time, girlfriend, this woman named Laura Keitlinger.
Okay.
She was on Saturday Night Live in the 90s. Comedian, awesome chick, actress. And I shot her for a couple different magazines, whatever, we became friends.
Right.
So her and Jack lived together off of Hollywood Boulevard, kind of down by Laurel Canyon on some side street. And one day I was over at her house, and she's always kind of said stuff like, "Oh, you got to meet my boyfriend Jack. You know, he's got this band Tenacious D." And at the time, I'm like, "Who the fuck is that?" Like, you know what I mean? Like, I had never heard of them. I didn't know anything about. This is before it got rolling.
Sure.
They were doing stuff. I don't know what. They had like a little cult following. They were doing something maybe on some TV show. But anyway, one day I was at her house, their house, and it was about fucking 2 p.m.
Okay.
I'm there. It's kind of dark, and Laura's getting makeup done, and I'm sitting there and I hear this. Hey guys, you wanna play some poker? And I'm like, who the fuck? And I look over and down some alley, like in this opened what do you call bathrobe, some slippers,
right?
Jack Black, and he just like was waking up.
Chest hair just blazing.
I don't even know. I don't remember that, but I remember his hair was all jacked up. I thought, am I on fucking Canada? I never knew the guy. I didn't know who he was.
Of course.
So that was my first introduction to him, and then I met him, and very quickly Laura's like, "Oh man, you got to have Sean shoot your band," and I'm like, "Yeah, anytime, that'd be cool."
Sure.
And so I don't know. A year goes by, and the record label calls me. I had an agent at the time, and I was into the music groove. I was shooting a lot of bands, so I was kind of getting known in the music circle already.
Right.
So Tenacious D was then signed a contract with, is it Epic Records?
So they got their break.
They got a break.
Right.
And we just got a call from their record label. I guess Jack had recommended me based on his girlfriend. So it was kind of like a backroom deal kind of deal. And so they called me and said, "Hey, can you meet up at Epic Records in Santa Monica? We're going to talk about the concept of this new album." I was like, "Fuck yeah, let's do it." So I drove to Santa Monica and met Jack and Kyle and their record label dude in some room. We were eating cookies and talking about it and about the concepts of the thing. And Jack's like, we're talking about different things. And Jack goes, "Man, it'd be really cool if if we did this tarot card concept." Then he pulls this devil tarot card up with like the pentagram and the devil. And he's like, "Yeah, we can do that." And then I threw out an idea, and then Kyle threw out an idea, and we're like, "And you can be chained to the Satan. It's like you guys are chained to Satan, and you're naked, and you have guitars, and blah, blah, blah." And it evolved into that real quickly. Bam, 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 bam. And then so we're like, okay, cool. So that's what we're going to do. So I leave, and we're going to do the shoot, I don't know, 3 weeks from then, whatever. And so the first thing was I had a producer. I had evolved a little bit in my career at this point in time, 2001.
Okay.
And so I got my big advertising break. I was kind of making some money. I actually had a new car. Like, I wasn't as ghetto as I was when I met Jack.
Made
like,
a little bit of noise in the industry.
Little noise. Yeah. And so I had a producer, Jennifer DeRay, and she was, and oddly enough, she sent me pictures yesterday from this shoot, and I didn't even tell her anything. I just told her we were doing a podcast.
Dude, that's
so it's kind of crazy.
Trippy.
So if you go to the Facebook page,
right,
you can actually see really cool like BTS photos of like just weird shit.
That stands for behind the scenes, guys. It's not some weird shit Sean's into. I just want to make sure we're clear there. Yeah. All right, go ahead.
So Jennifer, so I say, "Jen, okay, here's what we need. We need a giant, like a real giant." Like, in retrospect, I'm like, why don't we just build a giant, like out of like I don't know, like get a fake giant.
Yeah.
But we went to this, and this is a long time ago, so I'm paraphrasing the whole thing. Yeah. But back in those days, before the internet was a huge, huge thing, in LA, when you would do a casting, say, "I need a giant." So Jennifer would call all the agencies that maybe repped people who would be in the giant zone.
Okay.
Or called them. And they would send couriers with boxes of headshots. So when we did a job, Jen worked in the back of my house. We might have literally, I have photos of like 3 or 4 or 5,000 headshots. Like Jen would be like in this mound of headshots in the middle of this little room with her head sticking out, and we're just going through headshots looking for the right people for these roles that we were casting and whatever
This
job
is how
we were
Tinder
doing.
got started, right?
This is how I mean this
Swipe left,
this was the
was it
old
like
man. This
whatever,
was this was real, man. Like
Right.
it was crazy. But the giant. So anyway, we had these giants headshots would come in, and we cast a giant. We found a guy. He was like, I don't know, 8 foot tall, maybe for real. Like 7'11", like to 8, like he was a giant.
You're like,
he had a big, he had
fucking
a,
A.
he had a big head,
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
talk kind of funky,
Yeah.
like somebody you'd see like in a,
Acromegalia.
yeah, totally.
Yeah, right.
And so we're like, okay, you're the giant. We need you to go to this special effects artist in the valley. He's going to make a cast of your face. They're going to make a mask. They're going to make fucking wings. And they're going to make a podium with the devil legs.
Sure.
And the whole thing. And basically, he just stands behind.
I got you.
Which, what the fuck? Why do we need... I don't know. I guess because this part's big, his torso.
Right.
But anyway, so we hired the giant. He goes and gets his mask made. A little bit of time goes by while they're making these things, and I would check in. I would go down there and like check on their work. This was cool for me, man, because I love like this is like real Hollywood like special effects.
Yeah,
shit.
man.
Like, and we had a budget like to pay someone to make these fucking giant devil legs that are kind of like with big claws and like
Yeah, right.
mass and wings, and so we got those things made, and then I rented this little studio that I used to like to use in Hollywood called Studio 905. This guy was rad. This guy Mike owned this place, and he'd always give me like the bro. Like this guy, he drank. He was if he's alive, I'd be real surprised. This guy woke up, he drank all day.
Right.
He was a functioning high level alcoholic, and he would just liked me. I shot everything out of studio, and he always charged me the same shit, $500. It was like nothing. And he would let me do whatever I wanted in here. I'm like, hey man, I need to. I mean, I've done so much shit in this guy's studio. I'm like, he was like, what are you doing this time? Because the time before I had made a fake snow scene and ruined everything in his studio with these giant potato machines and fucking snow of potatoes everywhere, and I ruined all his stuff. So,
Explain to me what the fuck is a potato gun?
a potato.
Or a potato can.
So sometimes
Shooting the
when
potato.
you make fake snow.
Yeah.
They use like sometimes I think it was potato shavings or some kind of minute, I think.
Okay.
And it makes snow.
I didn't know if it was like the
Maybe
name
it's
or
not
the size
potato.
of it.
No,
Right.
these are these giant machines that like we made mountains of snow. I'm
Okay.
talking about fill the whole studio. with
Okay.
snow.
All right, I got you. So then you're like, all right, what's the next
So
thing?
I'm saying, so I say, Mike, this is easy, bro. We're shooting Tenacious D, Jack Black. I mean, Jack at this point in time, I think he had done High Fidelity,
Right.
and he was in Tenacious D.
Okay.
And I'm not a Tenacious D fan, like a fan of that kind of music.
Sure.
This isn't my style, but I think he had a big following.
Big time. Huge
after
following.
this shoot down the road, and we'll talk about probably on another podcast, there was other Jack Black shoots for different things
Okay.
that are also really great stories in different cities and
Sure.
stuff where I followed him around for a while. But so we had to make a pentagram. So it seems easy enough, but this is when I'm like, man, this is what fucking algebra's for. Is it or geometry, right? Like, you know,
Shout out, who was your algebra teacher? Do you remember?
I didn't
Yeah.
take algebra, but we made the pentagram, and then we're in there. We're making the pentagram with my assistant / best bud Travis Shin. What's up?
Okay.
And a couple other guys, and we get the pentagram done. We're happy with it, and then we're like, we need candles. I'm like, well, where do we get little cauldron candle things? Well, fucking Hollywood's so amazing because like there's no Google,
No.
but someone, Mike or somebody's like, hey man, they got like a Satan worship shop down on Hollywood and Highland,
Solid.
and I'm like, sweet. So I run down to the Satan shop,
Right.
and I go in and
Get your little
you
piece
can
of
buy
Satan.
spells and shit. And I'm like, well, fuck, we're shooting a goddamn pentagram with evil shit happening.
Sure.
Give me some Satan shit.
Right.
So the lady sells me some Satan like seance cauldrons or something. So we get those in, the candles, and then we're kind of all prepped and we're happy with that. Well, I think it's the following day or 2 days after that the shoot goes down. So we all get to the shoot, the location. Jack the Giant, Jack and the Giant, is that a thing?
Jack and the Beanstalk.
The Beanstalk.
Whatever.
Okay, let me step back. We pre-lit this too.
Okay.
They brought the costume and dropped it off before the shoot.
Okay.
So that we
You had a
could
chance.
light the set.
Gotcha.
Now, remember when I talked about the 4x5 bullshit that when I was in school? This was now 10 years before this.
Right.
Well, we decide, hey, let's shoot 4x5 for this. I don't know why we did that.
Okay.
But we did it because
Travis knows it.
we know it.
Yeah.
It's like big sheets of film.
Right.
The quality's really good. We felt it just fit the vibe.
Right.
Like you have these big cable releases. I'm putting a fucking black sheet over my head like Ansel Adams. Bam! And popping these, and it's you're doing some shit.
Right.
And then you're checking a Polaroid, and the Polaroid is big. Like this Polaroid that you held up.
Yep.
That is a 4x5. So the sheet of film is this big.
Okay.
So that's a big piece of film.
Absolutely. Right.
So we're pre-lighting this, and then I figure out real quickly, I'm not the best lighting guy. Like, this is where you learn, like, experience is everything. Because I'm lighting, now, if I'll show this, I'll be on Facebook, of course, but, like, if you see, here's where we started. That was the first test shot of the look how shitty that looks. Bam! Just like this front light. Like, you can't see any of the veins and the wings. It just look like dog shit. There's no vibe.
None.
And Travis had a lot of experience working for other photographers bigger than myself, and he had a better sense of light. He's a lighting guy. So he's like, oh, dude, we just need 2 lights from behind. I'm like, how the fuck are we going to... If we light it from behind, like, how do you see it in the front?
Right.
And he's like, dude... Like, we're just going to do 2 lights at a 45 from behind. It's going to go through the wings, and it's going to wrap around. Then we use some reflectors in the front to just kind of twinkle some light back.
Sure.
And then anyway, so we finally figured all that shit out. And the next day, Jack and Kyle show up, and Jennifer and our crew. We get somebody from the special effects company shows up and sprays the giant's body with shit, like, so he looks scary.
Right.
And so basically, and when the giant is behind the podium, when you look at this, he can't move. Like this, the legs wrap around his waist, and he's like, so the legs are actually sitting over his junk, and he's strapped in. He can't fucking move, and he's holding his arms out, and he's gonna sit in there for a long time. Well, we're sitting in there. We get Jack and Kyle in, and we're getting some kind of cool shots, and all of a sudden the giant goes, oh, my stomach. And we're like, what?
No
I mean, dude,
way.
and we're shooting 4x5. Everything is fucking takes a long time, because when you're 4x5, it's slow. It's not like bam, bam, bam. It's like every shot you take, you have to pull a fucking there's holders in the back with 2 sheets of film. You got to pull a holder thing up. You got to shoot. Everything is time consuming. So he's like, I'm gonna shit. I gotta shit. And I'm like, really, dude? Like the dude has like, he's gone code brown on us. You know what I mean? Like he's got a stage 10 code brown.
Yeah.
Like he's gonna shit all over the stage.
Right.
So I'm like, can you just hold it for just a few? And he's like, no, it's coming out.
He's
and
crying.
So he has to bail out of the whole deal and run to the bathroom, and like diarrhea's all over the, he has diarrhea.
How did yank the wings, yank
Whatever.
everything,
everything,
yank him out of this that's already been
I think the
pre-constructed,
wing,
and he hauls ass?
Yeah.
Holy shit. No
so
pun
that
intended.
kind of broke up the vibe for a sec.
Yeah.
But and imagine giant shit.
It's a lot of shit.
Dude, giant poop. Giant diarrhea.
It reminds me, you ever seen City Slickers?
Of course.
All right, so remember the scene where he's back there and he's talking to Billy Crystal and he's like, I shit bigger than you.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. That's the guy.
Totally applies.
So, here's where it gets weird.
Right.
So
this is where it gets weird. Not anything else.
And oddly enough, and we'll get into like my drug and alcohol past because I've been sober for a long time, and so this time period, generally on a shoot, I think I was in AA. I was in and out all the time. So this shoot I might have had like my 30-day chip again for the 50th time.
Right.
So I wasn't drinking this day.
Right.
But I was probably thinking about it. Sure. So this one went off kind of without a hitch in terms of drugs and alcohol. So that was kind of nice. And I just had my kids. That was another thing. I just had twins. So I had my sons Trip and Milo. They were born, I'm guessing, but I want to say they were born weeks before this photo shoot.
Wow.
Like weeks. They looked like cocktail shrimp.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes.
I think their little cord things had just fallen off their belly button. Mm-hmm. So my wife Laura was friends with Jack's girlfriend Laura. Right. They were friends. And so Laura, my wife, brought the babies by the studio just to say hi to Laura Keitlinger. Okay. And show her the babies. Right. Well, when she brings the babies over, we're in this dark, satanic workshop. It's a little dark. We're probably listening to Silence of the Lambs shit or whatever the fuck we're listening to. But we were in the zone. We had to fall. Instead of using, we also researched a lot about when I was at the Satanist place. Yeah. I said, hey, Miss Satan worshiper, what's the best way to get Satan fog, that looks really evil? Because in my mind, I'm like, oh, there's a fog machine or there's this. And she's like, no, man. You got to use dry ice because it floats on the floor in waves. And it looks really cool. So we had all this dry ice dropped off the morning of the shoot, like a shit ton. And we had these buckets all around the pentagram. And I think we put them in buckets. And then I can't remember what we did to figure out how it would float well, but I think we put little wet washcloths over the top of the buckets, and then we had one of the assistants was wafting it with a card, or I can't remember, but something like that. We had a few buckets and a few people were all working on each bucket, wearing all black so that we couldn't see them. It was a full evil situation. Yeah. And so Laura walks in with the babies, and Jack is sitting there, and maybe we're at lunch at this point in time. And there's also photos that Jen just sent me yesterday of our lunch break, and we're eating macaroni and cheese in a total ghetto thing. And Jack and Kyle's nicknames were KG, Cage, Rage in the Cage. So I didn't even know he had never heard Kyle. I was like, Cage. So Cage is sitting there with his little devil horns on his head and eating, and Jack's eating a sandwich or something, and the babies are sitting on the floor, and I think more than likely it was Jack, or he probably looked at the babies and he goes, man, what would be cool? And I go, what? He goes, what if the babies, you know how he talks, the babies are what if they're in the pentagram and then the other side is us after we've been casted, the spell has been casted by Satan, we're now adults. So we go, okay, that'd be rad. Right. So I'm like, and I've always said, and they're grown and they're alive now, so I can say all this, but I mean, I don't know if the internet was out, I probably got a lot of shit for this. Yeah. But my motto was I would always want to use people's kids for different things. Sure. And they wouldn't let me. And so I'm like, fuck you guys. I'll have my own kids and I'll do whatever I want with them. Right? I'll have my own props.
Shout out to Trip and Milo.
Right. Yep. Trip and Milo, they're the best, man. So we bring the babies in, and we put the.
You would have caught so much shit.
We put them in the pentagram.
Right, of course.
And then we laid them in the pentagram, and if you've had baby boys, you know that if they get cold, they pee in the air. Well, I have Polaroid somewhere where they're pissing One of them's pissing in the air. Then the fog, the dry ice starts going over the pentagram and then going over them. I didn't think anything of it at first, and I'm shooting, and there's a lot of light. Like when you with this camera, when you hit the button, normally when you hit a flash, you don't really hear the light. You could hear the light, and like when you hit these lights, it goes pop, pop. Like it sounded like lightning and thunder.
Right.
And so we're all crowded. So now Jack and Cage and I and Jen and Laura Murphy and Laura Keitlinger and we're a bunch of us behind the 4x5 camera watching through the upside down, because it's upside down.
Right.
You look at the thing.
Right.
We're looking through this big glass behind, and the babies are in the thing. And they start crying, and everyone's getting tense.
Uh-huh.
And Jack goes, "Is dry ice poisonous?" And we're like, "Fuck, I don't know. I think it is. Is it?"
I don't know, but you realize
Philip's shaking his head yes.
You realize that, like, when Jack Black is the unlikely voice of reason, you're in a fucked up spot.
We're in a fucked up spot.
Like,
so then I'm like, fuck it, we just need a couple more shots. Bam, bam, and I just do that.
Not cease and desist.
Not cease and desist, but I'm like, just a couple more. Bam, bam, and then we yank them out, and then we do pictures. I have some other cool Polaroids. I hopefully I can find them with this really cool one of Jack and Cage holding my babies in front of Satan, and I did a Polaroid of them, and then they wrote on the Polaroid like "Fly high, young one," or if it gave them like some cool shit for their future.
Sure,
some
really inspiring,
some great
words
stuff,
and some solid.
Totally. And
so let me see the other side of the album cover while we're like checking it out real quick. Okay, so that's the one with the guitar. Dude, that is so rad, man. So cool. So those were literally your boys. Which one? Trip and Mila?
I don't even know.
It's kind of hard with the haze and what are they laying on?
Just a black cloth or something.
Yeah.
But I'll say, like, when this came out, if you have the one with the babies, it's a collector's item because they put the album out all over the world.
Right.
And then it got yanked.
Because the kids?
Because the kids.
So
the album was released, and then it was probably Walmart or Target or one of them's like, we're not running this with the babies. So then they had to digitize the babies out.
Let me see real quick. Are they chained? It kind of gives the impression that they're chained.
It looks like they're chained around their necks.
It kind of does. Yep. I can't imagine that you realize this would be all over of the news channels.
Oh yeah. So if you have one with the babies, they don't do that. Got yanked. That's a collector's item. Yeah.
It's hilarious that it's your kids.
And my kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Dude, that is freaking wild.
And they've been on a few album covers throughout their baby years.
Right.
I was looking at one of Ozzy today with he's with a porn star.
Of course.
And like she's holding him between her boobs, or I don't know what the hell, but it was cool. Now, I had a cool dad moment last year before I left LA. I took my son Trip, who's on the back of this album. We spent the night together, just kind of cruising through Hollywood, and we went to Amoeba Records, which is like the coolest, biggest record store in the world. Really, it's in LA. It's like 2 stories. It's giant. It's the premier record store.
Right.
So I took him there, and like it was cool. And I didn't even plan this shit, but we're like walking through the aisles, and he's like, "Dad, you shot that Weezer album cover." I'm like, "Yeah, cool. Yeah, that was me." And so now he thinks I'm cool.
Right.
And then I said, "You want to see something really fucking cool?" And then we did. I found this. He bought it. Like, we found this album, and we found the one with the babies. I don't know how, but he found it and he bought it. And he was like, he thought I was cool. And
dude, that's cool. That's awesome.
So that was a nice
full circle. Connect.
That was a nice moment.
Yeah.
And now he's almost 19. He's in the AmeriCorps. My other son's in LA, doing his thing. And
what's your what's your third son?
Ozzy.
Ozzy. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. And he's younger than the
he's the oldest.
Twins. He's the oldest.
He's 20.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I got you. Dude, that is like walking through that experience. I think really in telling the story, it totally encapsulates the entire purpose of this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we were, I grab a 4x5 wherever we set it. And the next thing we know, we're talking about Satan's got seriously irritable bowel syndrome. You know what I mean? Like, and you've got your fucking kids inside of a pentagram that you may or may not be putting them in a situation with dry ice.
What if they end up on like? My thought was like if they end up doing some horrible thing and then they're on Oprah. How did this all start?
My dad.
I was in a pentagram when I was 4 weeks old.
With dry ice.
With Satan.
Being blown out by like probably lights that are like 30,000 watts, flash bulbs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Dude, how do you feel? First one, man.
I feel good.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah? You enjoy it?
Yeah.
Good. I think it was solid as hell, man. I look forward to doing this. Dude, thank you again.
Let's do a triple high five. Come on in here,
You want to do the triple high five?
Triple high five.
Right.
1, 2,
3.
Bam.
Got it.